Alright, I got a question for you guys. Have any one of you ever played amazing games such as Sega Bass Fishing and Sega Marine Fishing and thought to yourself, these games are absolutely fun, but they control absolutely bizarre with the original Dreamcast controller? Well, worry no more, because back in 1999, Sega fixed this problem with the unveiling of the Sega Dreamcast Fishing Controller. Now, if you've seen my short film, Say Hello to My Little Clones, then you would know absolutely how amazing this thing is, but if you haven't, that's okay, because that's what I plan to discuss in today's video. So, without much further ado, let's start my review of the Sega Dreamcast Fishing Controller. The Dreamcast Fishing Controller was released on September 9th, 1999, which is also the same day that the Dreamcast was released in North America. And one interesting fact about this thing is that it still stands as the only official fishing peripheral for any video game console to date. So let's talk about the features of this controller. It's got a start button, it's got an analog stick, A, B, and X, Y buttons as well. And it's also got this fishing reel thing, which basically, yeah, you can rotate it just like you would with a real fishing rod. And if we turn it onto the back here, you actually see this huge bulky thing which actually contains the rumble pack that's built inside of it. And let me tell you, this thing rumbles like crazy. And I think you guys get the point. So on top of all those buttons and stuff, this thing is actually a motion controller as well, and you can move it in two different directions. You can move it horizontally and vertically. Alright, so the process of making this thing work on the Dreamcast is relatively simple. All you need to do is to take its controller plug and plug it into controller port A on the Dreamcast. But wait, you need to remember one more thing. If you take a look at your fishing controller, you will notice that there's no VMU slot inside. So what you need to do is to have an extra Dreamcast controller at hand and plug it into either controller port B, C, or D. It doesn't matter which one. And then take a VMU and plug it into your Dreamcast controller. This will allow you to save your progress in basically whatever fishing game you're gonna go at. So these two here are all the fishing games that I have for the Dreamcast at the time I make this video. They are Sega Bass Fishing and Sega Marine Fishing. I would like to talk about Sega Bass Fishing first because that's the more well-known out of the two here. So the way that this game works with the fishing controller is that you can select your fishing spot by moving the analog stick. And then in order to cast your lure, you need to actually flick your fishing controller, which is quite cool. Now the bass in this game are quite smart, and you need to do things that are going to trick them into biting your lure. So the way that you do this is that you need to keep spinning your reel in order to keep your lure moving. And you can also jerk the fishing controller in order to make the lure look more believable to the bass. Once you got everything done right, one of these guys should actually bite your lure. And once that happens, you just jerk up your fishing controller in order to make the hook latch onto the fish. And once the bass bites the hook, you're in for a wild ride, because now it becomes a game of basically maintaining a balance in your line tension, where you can't reel in too fast or too slow, because doing either one of those will cause you to lose the fish. And there are also going to be times where the game tells you to turn your rod right or turn it to the left, and following these commands will basically decrease your line tension. And if you manage to get everything right without breaking the line tension, you will find yourself catching a nice sweet bass like I did here. This game is really fun, and it really uses the fishing controller in a really nice way. So now that we are done with Sega Bass Fishing, I think it's time we move on to Sega Marine Fishing. Now this game basically uses the fishing controller in the exact same ways, but there are a few key differences to this game versus Sega Bass Fishing. If you actually rotate your analog stick while you're in the water, you can actually gain a good view of what fish is around you. And it can be quite useful because there are some fishes that you definitely do not want to catch in this game. And no, this part right here is the exact same as Sega Bass Fishing, because you just need to flip the controller up like that and you will hook the fish. And I think this part right here is really what separates Sega Marine Fishing from Sega Bass Fishing. I find that the line tension is much harder to basically balance in this game, because as you see, it fluctuates like crazy in this game all the time. And there are so many times in this game where I actually overdo it and just snap the lines and stuff like that, because I do find this part much more difficult than Sega Bass Fishing. And because of that, I like this game more than Sega Bass Fishing. I find it a much more intense experience, and it is a lot more fun for me. whenever I play this game. And one cool thing that this game does versus Sega Bass Fishing is that there are many different types of fish with different amounts of intensity, unlike Sega Bass Fishing, which only had one fish, the bass. For example, in this game, there's the sailfish, which is easily the hardest fish to get in this game. And it's so difficult because you always snap your line on this thing all the time. But if you do manage to get one of these, it is super exciting and fun and rewarding to get one of those. Alright, so the next game we're gonna move on to is Sonic Adventure, because I would like to address a common misconception that people have with this game. Because most people think that the Big the Cat stages work with the fishing controller. Yes and no. You can move him around with the analog stick and you can jump with the A button. But in order to cast the lure, you gotta press the B button, which is weird already, and you can't even jerk the lure with the fishing controller. And to top it all off, watch this. When I try to spin the fishing reel, somehow it just kicks me out of fishing mode. That is the stupidest thing ever, and it definitely proves that the Big the Cat stages don't work that well with the fishing controller. Well, not all is lost, because if you play this game with the fishing controller, there's an interesting thing that happens. Yeah, did you just see that? Well, if you didn't, well, basically the camera gets really screwed in this game. And I think the reason why is, as I'm showing right here, the camera is actually mapped to the motion controls of the fishing controller, which is absolutely bizarre, and it actually breaks the game beyond belief, as I will definitely be showing some examples when I'm playing this. And oh, to top it off, okay, so this game uses the analog stick to move Sonic. You can press A to jump and you can use B to do the spin dash. But that analog stick, oh man, it's okay for selecting menus and stuff like that in those fishing games, but it is absolutely atrocious for a platformer like Sonic. It makes this game 10 times harder to control, and it doesn't help that that camera is really screwed up too. And to give you guys a little bit more perspective on how screwed up that camera is, you remember that classic scene where Sonic's running away from that killer whale? Well, if you play this game with the fishing controller, this is what it looks like. So if any of you guys ever wonder what the killer whale sees when it's chasing after Sonic, well, this is what you get. Oh my goodness. Yeah, I'm sure this is a perfect example to show you guys how screwed up the camera is, but don't worry, I still got a lot more examples to show you guys. So here we are in Twinkle Park Zone, and we're gonna do the kart scene, and yeah, occasionally for some weird freaking reason, the camera just keeps switching from third to first person view for some reason. And then look at that, the camera got stuck there too. It's freaking hilarious. And this glitch actually works really well with loops because you get this really cool perspective, like here for example. And oh boy, after seeing how much those areas screwed up, you can only imagine how bad it would be for the roller coaster. Man, isn't this the most hilarious thing ever? I mean, when I discovered this thing for the first time, I was absolutely amazed about how much the fishing rod just breaks this game, and how much harder it makes it to play Sonic Adventure. So yeah, unfortunately I cannot show you any more of these camera breaking glitches, because this video would be way too long if I tried that. But if you ever want to find out or discover more of these glitches for yourself, I highly recommend getting a fishing controller just for that reason. So with all that fun stuff out of the way, we're gonna move on to a game that you might never believe that works with a fishing controller, and that awesome game is Soulcalibur. Now I did show off how this controller works with Soulcalibur in my Say Hello to My Little Clone short video. If you would like to see that particular video, I'll leave the link in the description below. But in this particular video, I'm going to explain more detail how exactly it works. So the way that this game works with the fishing controller is that you can move it horizontally and vertically. And if you decide to wave it horizontally, it will give you different moves than if you were to wave it vertically. And to be honest, it does look ridiculous seeing somebody use a fishing controller for something like Soulcalibur, but let me tell you something. When you use this controller, you absolutely become beasts at this game. In fact, I played this game versus like other people and stuff like that who were using normal controllers, and I managed to defeat them with the fishing controller. That's how beast you can get. And to top it off, I actually got so far into the game with the fishing controller that I got to the final boss. And oh my goodness, is this boss freaking hard. Even with the normal controller, you cannot just spam your attacks on this boss because he will wipe you off the map if you do that. And when I was recording footage for this video right here, I died so many times that I couldn't even freaking believe it. But I just kept on persisting, and eventually I defeated this boss with a fishing controller, and the game awarded me with this awesome replay of just me just whooping this boss's bum to the ground. And I was so happy to see that cutscene right there, because after this playthrough I got so exhausted from just waving that fishing controller around. And yeah, but I completed the game with the fishing controller, and that makes me happy. But don't worry guys, I still have enough energy to play one more game, and that is Virtua Tennis. And it's a tennis game essentially, a really good one at that. So the way that this game works with the motion controller is that you can use the analog stick to move the character around. And in order to basically swing at the tennis ball, you gotta swing the remote like you would, you know, in real life, which is really cool. And this game is freaking awesome. I love this game a lot. But here's an interesting point that I would like to bring up about this game. Let's take a look at this footage right here. Does it look kind of similar to something? No? Then how about I show you this? Yeah, doesn't it actually look a little bit like Wii Tennis? That's really interesting because the fishing controller and the Sega Dreamcast came out 7 years before the Wii did with Wii Sports. And everybody gives praise to the Wiimote, but nobody gives praise to the Sega Dreamcast Fishing Controller. That's a shame. But on a much brighter note, I am very happy to have both of these motion controllers. And I know some of you guys would be asking, which one do I prefer? I like the fishing controller more, and it's not due to Sega bias. I'm not even close to being a fanboy, and I think fanboyism is stupid. But the reason why I like the fishing controller is because it's very easy to use. All you need to do is plug it into your Dreamcast and it works. With the Wiimote, you have to use 2 AA batteries just to turn it on. And then to top it off, you need to also set up the Wii sensor bar, which, you know, if you don't have it properly centered on the television, your Wiimote's gonna be off. And I find it such a hassle compared to the simplicity of the Sega Dreamcast fishing controller. So that's basically the reason why I like the fishing controller more than the Wiimote, but there is one nice feature that the Wiimote has that the fishing controller does not, and that is the wrist strap, which essentially prevents you from accidentally throwing the controller into the TV. So yeah, whenever you play with the Dreamcast fishing controller, be sure to have a really good grip, otherwise you're gonna end up with an ugly crack on your television. But if you are really careful in the way you handle the fishing controller, this shouldn't be a problem because I haven't cracked the TV screen. At least not yet. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed my review of the Sega Dreamcast Fishing Controller. It is an absolutely sweet peripheral, and I cannot recommend it more than enough. So, with that being said, I want to thank you all for watching, and may the dream be with you!